Very much looking forward to turning this key and seeing this engine come back into life. I have a few little things to do before I do that. Definitely need to keep it cool, so I got to fit the radiator that I painted last week. Need to fit in a battery, and just so that there's back pressure and everything like that, I'll connect up the exhaust.
There was one little thing I'd missed when I was fitting in the engine, and that's this little support plate. So I cleaned it up and sprayed it with the fan and the radiator, and then put it in its correct place with the gearbox mounting. I had just put a nut on the end of the bolt, but this bracket has a captive nut which holds everything in place firmly. So I tightened the big bolt that goes through from the inner wing, and there was 3 bolts to tighten on the chassis leg. Then I could drop the engine and the car together and get on with fitting the radiator. There's 2 little rubber grommets for a wind deflector plate, which I had been good and cleaned and painted when it came off the car. That's definitely the right way to do things when you're carrying out a big project like this. Clean everything up as it comes off. This is quite a complicated assembly that includes the bonnet latch. It actually ties that slam panel and lower front cross member together, giving the car a bit of structure and a solid landing for the bonnet. I was able to tighten most of these with the small ratchet, and then this one behind the clasp needed a spanner. With the paint fully dried, I could refit the fan to the motor support plate. There's 3 little screws on this, which I tightened up, and then refitted the wires with their original metal clips, which just about held together to be reused again. That radiator's definitely seen better days, but it'll do to get us started again. Pausing to make sure I get the orientation right. It's much handier to bolt all this together outside the car and then fit it all in together. It's a good design location for the radiator. Loads of space behind it for air to flow away up over the gearbox rather than sending warm air back onto the engine. In goes the lower radiator hose, which again has these handy spring clips. Nice bit of protection there on it to go into that clamp, and clip that back into place. Exactly the same job with the top hose. And that's the radiator reinstated. Well, we won't be going anywhere without a starter and a battery. And the first thing I'm connecting here is the earth cable. It goes onto the gearbox first, and then over to the chassis leg, and then it goes up to the battery when it's in place. I tightened those 2 bolts, and then I could fit my plastic battery tray. This makes great sense because so many metal plates become an anode and corrode badly. Even so, the area below this was one of the few internal areas of the car that needed welding. There's a little expansion tank for the radiator that goes in here, and that's a tool-free installation. We're heading right into the winter now, so I will add coolant with antifreeze in it immediately. That's one thing I don't want to get caught out with. I jacked the car up again to fit the exhaust, and I'd found these 2 plates that go on either side of the front cross member. They just have a towing eye in them. Again, I painted them when they came off, so just get the right orientation and fit them on. It's good to be looking after all these little details as we go along. It was a great relief when I took off the exhaust that all the bolts came off peacefully from the downpipe, which makes it much easier now that I'm fitting up. There was nothing to drill or tap. Let's keep it that way. So a bit of lubricant before fitting it up. Fit my little gasket. I just thought I'd get the bolts on loosely, even though there is a flexi section in this, just not to strain the exhaust. So just got them in hand tight and then went back and tilted it all up so nothing was under strain. That exhaust rubber was waiting there for the entire project. I tightened up my 3 bolts then at the front, and I'd work my way down through the other 2 sections. If I wasn't doing this on the video, I'd have probably thrown the battery in now and cranked it up, but you give me patience. While I was down there, I said I'd do the gear selector and the stabilizer bar, because I have been putting the car up and down a bit like a yo-yo already. The tie wraps had kept these out of harm's way when the car was moved around a bit during the last couple of years, and it's really nice to see these things slotting into place. Connecting these means it won't be a long time till we're moving again. I'm aware that we'll need drive shafts to do that, and I might get away with just coming in from the sides to do those. In the meantime, we're just going to focus on getting that engine running again. Putting Chewy back on the ground again reminds me I'm going to have to sort out some wheels and tyres before I can get back on the road. I couldn't resist hopping in and checking the gear selection. Looks like a full box. Around to the back end then and raised the car. I went in from the side to fit this middle section, which brings the exhaust gases around the floor and the fuel tank. A little bit more lubricant for the threads and also the exhaust rubber so it would slip on easily. I gave them a good squeeze. I don't want to come down here again. I think I might treat Chewy to a new front and mid section of the exhaust. These are on the car since we got it, but we did get a rear silencer while the car was in use. Those aren't original bolts, so I think I might have had trouble that time when I originally replaced the silencer. I haven't forgotten that I have to put a breather pipe on along the filler neck, but for the moment we could go ahead and fill, as we're not going to be moving about. Oh, the masking is still here behind the fuel flap, and there's some cover still to go in there. I'll do that when I put on the lock mechanism. This is always an awkward job on your own. But I got that going remarkably tidy and didn't spill a drop. It's precious stuff, this diesel these days. In order to prime the system, I removed the outlet pipe from the filter housing, and then I just stuck another pipe on it and pump like crazy to get it through. So now I had diesel all the way up to here. I can swap back onto the correct pipe. I clipped that on and then pumped a bit of pressure into the system. Now I need to think about the air intake.
I met a guy late at night in a car park and got this air intake box which I was missing. I was answering a classified ad for Daihatsu Charade parts. There's another funny detail to this story is that I've had an air filter knocking around the garage for one of these for a very long time. So we might as well start up with that now.
The receipt was still in the box and it was for 2014.
The guy had a really nice Charade which he turned up with, and it was really cool to see that. It had just been resprayed itself, and really nice to see one, especially in the middle of the time where I hadn't had this one running for ages, so it was really great to hear one running again.
I'm so delighted to have found this because it really completes the engine bay. I had the intake from a naturally aspirated one, just held on at the side of the turbo, and it looked terrible. So this is really snazzy. All the right pipes were on it and it fitted straight into place. This was a slick move, replacing the incorrect oil breather. I was, however, missing the bolts, so I went back to my eFox Engineer supplies. I stuck a couple of nuts inside so that I could push the bolt down to the threads squarely. I think there's a bit of overspray on that from the job that was done on the other car, so I might try cleaning that off sometime or paint the whole thing black. I made a mistake at the beginning of the project ordering that battery from Mick's garage because it's ended up sitting around for 4 years while the engine was out of the car. My thinking was I might be shunting the car around a fair bit, and I hate swapping batteries over and back from different cars, but ultimately it's ended up sitting there while the engine was out of the car for nearly 4 years and is older than it needed to be going in. But it'll be a good test of the quality of the battery to see how long it lasts from here. It has done a fair bit of jump start duties around the place, so I know it to still be in good condition now. The moment of truth. And there's life in Chewy. Glow plugs worked quickly. Look, radio light and the clock. But there's no oil light. I had to jack it up again. I wasn't going to risk this good engine without knowing there was oil pressure. So I found the connection at the back. Could so easily have done that when I was doing that gear selector. Oh well. And then the connector broke. So this little set of blue connectors from eFox Engineers saved the day. I crimped one on. There's quite a limited space down here. I'm not even sure a proper crimp would have fitted in there, so anyway, vice grips worked. That was holding nicely. It would fit in there and was providing its own insulation. Fingers crossed for the next turn of the key. Ah, there it is. Now, hopefully it'll go out soon. Yep, there it goes.
Been a long time. little tractor. Excellent. When I first looked into this engine bay 4 years ago at the beginning of the project, I was all full of confidence because I just completed my cadet project, and of course with the cadets I've been playing with those since I was about 12 years old, and when I looked in here I went, what have I done? Because this was not as familiar to me at all, and I was quite intimidated as I was taking it apart about putting it back together again. So that's why I'm absolutely delighted that it's all gone back together and started up okay. So really looking forward to next week. We'll get this thing moving under its own steam again.